When it comes to everything fantasy football, you have to ask one question. Don't you deserve a fighting chance? And now, welcome to Fighting Chance Live with your hosts, Kevin Tompkins and Scott Fishbowl 9 winner, Gary Haddow.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fighting Chance Live. It's the After Dark edition tonight because it is late. But you know what? It's well worth moving the time around because we have probably our biggest show to date. Because we have it says Liz Loza there, but that is actually Kacey Kasem. I don't want you guys to freak out or anything.
What are you talking about? I'm Liz Loza.
Look at my custom hat. I mean, I don't know where that.
Yeah, we got Kacey Kasem in the house. Kacey, how are you today?
Super.
One word. I like
crushing it.
And of course, the vivacious Liz Loza. Liz, how are you?
Vivacious, apparently. I'll take it. Oh my gosh. I don't know, because 2020 makes me feel washed like 60% of the time. So vivacious, definitely improvement.
Well, with all the shit going on, trust me, we need everything we can get at this time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's great to have you guys. It's great to meet you, and I'm super excited. Gary, how are you doing?
Man, I'm doing good. I was a little low on energy, but now that I've started to get some Trulies into my system, not a sponsor, but now the energy's coming back. Get some sugar and whatnot. So, yeah, it's fun. Liz, you said you have a 3-year-old. I have my going on 3-year-old. He'll be 3 in September. So I know the struggles and pains. Luckily, he has been asleep for a couple hours, so I've had some downtime.
You're in a different time zone.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am. Yeah, it definitely helps a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, that was not mine. Was definitely like, okay, I have to go wee wee. Also, I need to snuggle with your head on the pillow. Some more songs. I'm like her bitch, like whatever she want. Yes, ma'am. Like I think people would be surprised because I don't think I seem like someone who takes a lot, but that little girl tells me what to do and I salute and whatever she wants.
We take all this shit from our kids. Like my wife has to actively get my son now to be like, stop pushing daddy in the face because you want him to go get you watermelon. Like ask him as I'm like, oh yeah, watermelon. Like, no, let's go, big guy.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, yeah.
I mean, is it? It's not. It's really not awesome. Like,
I don't know.
A couple years ago, I thought I was pretty cool. And now I'm like, oh God, I just take orders from a mini version of me, a very tiny me.
Well, my girlfriend has a 35-year-old here, so we had no kids. It's basically just me. So
I thought for a second, like, also I'm drinking tequila, but I thought for a second that you had a girlfriend who had a 35-year-old son.
No.
I was like, well,
I didn't take you on that journey, Liz. I'm sorry.
The greatest generation indeed.
Love is love, right, Kev?
Wow.
Oh my God.
That's what I thought was
Get it, lady. Go get it. Kevin Tompkins.
Wait, is that not what was
that's not even a cougar. That's just like, I don't even know what, like a taxidermied cat. Like, that's awesome.
That's a cat that's like left over from the Tiger King or something.
That's a rescue cat. Yeah.
Holy hell. But yeah, so we'll start with you, Liz, for anybody that's living under a rock. Liz, tell us where we can find all your stuff, what you're doing. And yeah, floor is yours. Go right ahead.
Sure. Well, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram and see, I don't know, random thoughts, pictures, fantasy takes, NFL analysis at Liz Loza _FF. Any of those social platforms. Right now, I'm working on a written series called Rest versus Rust, or Rust versus Rest, depending on what mood I'm in. And that's when I kicked it off with Ben Roethlisberger, who we'll talk about a little bit later. Last week, I talked about Cam. This week, it will post to Yahoo Sports tomorrow, or when you're listening to this right now, it's AJ Green. And it's basically, I decided to take some of the players who had in their past been fantasy studs, but because of injuries and age and an potentially abbreviated at least off season, we're looking at some weird circumstances heading into 2020. And there's this age-old debate about, well, the rest will help them, but if too much rest, does that turn into rust? And so I enlisted the help of a fantastic orthopedic surgeon and team physician at the University of Southern California, Dr. Alex Weber. And so I've been working with him, asking him. I've learned so much about Liz Frank injuries, for instance, like the Cam Newton piece I found really illuminating, because he was talking to me about the fact, and I'm sorry to keep going on, but I just think that this is such a important tidbit that I'm not hearing enough people talk about, that when players, rookies, come to the combine and present with a Liz Frank injury, it is a negative predictor of career life and longevity, just even health longevity. Yeah. And yet that is because when the ligament is torn, the bones, which there are many of, small bones in the feet, get misaligned, and the surgery is then to realign the bones. And after the player's rehab, they can find a widening, which means a misalignment of the bones. And that's when the injury and the foot injury becomes recurrent. But Cam did not have a misalignment of the bones. He did not have a widening when he went into rehab and returned to sport. Therefore, the expectation, his tear, his ligament issue in the foot was not a complete rupture. So the bones didn't need to be aligned as much. It didn't need as much work. So the chance of that becoming recurrent for him, even given his mobility, is much slimmer. So I love the idea of a of a bounce back, and also because he suffered that injury so early. In fact, it was against the Patriots in the preseason, right? Yeah. He had so much time to rehab it, and he only got the additional clean out on it so that he could be 100% confident in putting any necessary weight. He had the benefit of rest and time. So he's my QB 11, but I would have never come to that conclusion had I not been talking to an orthopedic surgeon who gave me these hashtag facts. Yeah. And so to me, this work is a different vehicle than I've ever done in my career before, but it's also just been really illuminating and helpful in ways. I think we always he'll get healthy, or AJ Green is pretty fascinating to me because spoiler, the doctor thinks that his ankle will come back 100%, but he's a little bit worried about the rest of him falling apart because he hasn't had game speed since October really of 2018.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So even if it's not an ankle, it could be something else because everything's starting to, heading into his age 32 season fall apart. Anyway, I've talked a whole bunch. I'm so sorry. Casey, go ahead.
Real quick, I just want to jump in and say Unifpo. Yeah. For you guys that can't see, if you click on the live comments on the right of the screen, you can see other people that are watching ask questions, whatnot. Yeah, I mean, based off everything that Liz just said, I'm going to go with Trubisky. He actually has a chance to start. Stidham he's useless. 12 passes and 4 of them were interceptions. So don't even waste your time on that nonsense. Go with Trubisky. If something happens to Foles, you have upside, and he has standalone value that he could beat out Foles, which he won't, but he could. Casey.
Yeah.
Hi.
How's it going?
What are you drinking, by the way?
What am I drinking? Well, okay, so my wife says we're on a diet, okay? So she's like, we have to only drink vodka.
I won't tell Casey.
Okay, well, I know, but there's rats, Are
you in the NBA bubble?
Yes.
No, nobody got that? Okay.
I got it. No, I got it. It just takes me a minute to process. Okay. I have been drinking. I am in Central Time Zone. So anyway, where was I? Oh, yes. So I'm drinking. So what I'm drinking right now is wine. I got rosé, but I also have a cider that I snuck up here. It's just a lot of stuff. I'm drinking a lot of stuff.
Diet alcohol?
No.
So she said. So here's what this is what Sarah said.
I've only heard of rosé and rap songs.
She said, if there's a bottle of wine open in the refrigerator, we need to drink it so that it doesn't go bad. Yeah. But if it's not open, we're not going to drink it. There was half a bottle of rosé that we had this weekend, so there we go. That's how you do it. And if she would have checked, no, I'm saying the bottle was half empty. I wasn't gonna.
You have a quarantine stash though?
Oh, we all blew through that in like March 20th,
No, but the
right?
lady, I
Yeah,
used
right.
Drizzly to order my alcohol, right? And like the lady over there at Liquor King, like knows me on a first name basis. She calls me and she's like, "We don't have this cider. These are the ones we have." I'm like, "You don't have to tell me the ones you have. I already know because I call you every week."
She calls you and you're like, I haven't even placed an order. She's like, I know, but it's like you were about to place it. I know it was coming.
We buy 6 bottles of vodka at a time, and so when that runs out,
I've got my my handle of Tanqueray, and I'm chasing with Truly after.
There you go.
It's gonna be some good times. But Kacey, drop your stuff. What are you doing? What are your podcast? Drop it, girl.
I'm doing some stuff. So I'm writing over at Fighting Chance Fantasy, like awesome dudes right here. I haven't put out anything in a couple of weeks, but someday soon. And then I started a podcast up with my homie JJ that I've known since middle school. He is kind of just now like dipping his toes in the whole like get out there, try to like get in the fantasy Twitter kind of thing. So we're doing that slowly and surely coming along. But yeah, it's called I don't know my own podcast name. No, it's called Fantasy Football JK because he's JJ and I'm Kacey. Obviously, we went with that because, like we know. Anyway, that's about it. I don't have. I'm wearing a hat that says "just drunk." If you guys really need to know the status of what's going on.
I love it. I love it.
Right.
Sorry.
Don't be sorry. Don't be sorry at all. I love your hats. They are you personified. The sorry about my wife hat is my favorite.
Yeah. I was wearing a different hat earlier and my wife was like, I hate that hat. And I was like, perfect. I'm gonna wear that. But then I realized I was like, no, I'll just be nice and I'll take it off. But this isn't any better. This is what our bachelorettes wore or this is what our bridesmaids wore at our bachelorette party when we were in New Orleans. And I had one that said "Drunken Love" because that's what I do.
You love it. That's awesome. So I want to rehash one thing before we start getting into everything. I think we all, if you didn't watch the open bar when Liz and Kacey and Scott Fish and obviously J. Mike and Gabe were on there, they told the story of how Kacey and Liz met. So I want to rehash that. So I'm going to let whoever either of you take the floor because I think everybody needs to hear that if you weren't watching that.
Yeah, but
I have not heard this.
Well, here's the problem with that is like I don't remember having that conversation on the open bar. So
girl, you were lit on the open bar.
I'm guessing that it was probably made bigger than it really was. Or maybe made me sound like I was a B word.
No, well, a little bit.
There we go. That's right. That's totally fine.
Well, you just posted pictures.
I did.
Yeah.
That was like so exciting when that popped up. I was like, oh.
So we were at what was it called? The National Fantasy Football Convention?
Yeah.
The one in Dallas?
Yeah.
Was that the Zeke where he like told you couldn't get to or you couldn't say hi to him, Kacey? Is that? Yeah.
This is correct.
We're all piecing it together here.
Way to bring up good times.
It's the only reason anybody knows who I am.
I'm such an asshole. It is what it is.
Anyway.
No,
so you guys were there.
So I was there. I was speaking at the event, and I don't know. It's like weird, right? Like I'm there speaking, but you're walking around with this polo on. Like they asked us to wear these polos with our names on the back and this insignia. And I have like a backpack and I feel like a dork. And I see this woman with these fly glasses and this Scott Fishbowl t-shirt. And I'm like, oh, mi gente, like my people, like, let's go so I like make a beeline up to her with this big cheesy smile on my face. And I was like, hi, are you in the Scott Fishbowl? And she was like, why?
Not that I'm wearing a shirt. I just bought it for fun.
And she like definitely was like, she gave me one of these. Mm-hmm.
Who are you? No, I'm kidding.
And I was like,
she was.
oh, sorry.
She's like,
I'm
this
Liz
bitch.
Loza, bitch. But like, no, I didn't do that. But I was
No,
like,
I'm
I'm in the Scott Fish Bowl too. And so like we started talking, and then that was it. So then we started talking, and Katie was there. Your wife was there, but also Katie Flower, who is Katie Flower and I, who like she works for Under the Hood, right? UDH.
Believe so.
I think so. Dynasty, and we got a big talk about Aaron Jones versus Jamal Williams, and then we're eating barbecue together and like just hung out and had kind of a girls' weekend.
Yeah,
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Look at that fantasy football conventions bringing people together. Who'd have thought?
I mean, I am thankful for fantasy football convention, but Liz, let me just tell you, the polos with the names on the back is a lot better than the previous year. They didn't have any identification on anybody, so you go up and be in line to get an autograph from a guy, and you don't know who he is because he's like this. Like,
no, I was there the previous year too.
Yeah.
I like the polos; they were definitely an upgrade, but I felt like I definitely felt kind of
still kind of
lame, like just
you're in like a little uniform, like you work at Best Buy or something, but no offense to anybody.
That's how we did. So basically, I saw Kacey and made her be my friend. Is what
she threw a little shade at first.
Yeah,
well, I mean, that's like 99% of my life is throwing shade, so I don't know. It's unintentional shade. How about that?
I knew it was. That's just what happened. I was like, oh no, please like me. I don't know anybody.
Well, I was probably I was probably like a good 8 vodkas in at that time. So
only 8?
Yeah, only 8. And it's kind of expensive, you're at a convention.
Yeah, that's true.
It was also like 11:30 a.m.
You telling me you have never had a mimosa? I think we waited till like noon when we went to the hard stuff.
I love it. So
your Scott Fishbowl shirt. So you're rocking Scott Fishbowl, and that would have been Scott Fishbowl 8, maybe 9.
It was 8, and I can't fit in that shirt anymore, and it makes me really sad. It's hanging in my closet, though. I can look at it every morning for some motivation.
And so now here we are with SLPX drafts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is everybody done with their draft?
Oh man,
just today.
Done.
Yeah, Kacey was like one of the first to finish. You were the first person that I saw finish, even if you weren't the first draft.
Yeah, there was one I think in front of us. We were there for a while, but then we had to go to sleep. So. Yeah,
I think we were like top 6 or 7.
I've never been a fast one before. It's always been like I'm still drafting like right now, but
6 hours between everybody's picks. So let's just get your thoughts on each team. So Kacey, how are you liking your team now that you've been done for a little bit?
For like a week.
I've had a chance to sit here and really think.
Reflect.
I like it. I liked it when I did it. I like it now. I've never liked my draft before in the Scott Fish Bowl, so I don't know if that says anything, but I'll go with it for now. I mean, we'll see.
And then you got Liz dropping hot fire with Dak at 103.
Yeah, that has been news. Also, we'll do it again. Like I don't
be ashamed.
People being like, well, I got him at 110. And I was like, cool, talk to me about the rest of your roster because mine's fucking fire. Like, I'm not.
She says fire.
I am sure that shit's going to fall apart, week 3. But right now, let me have this moment. Like, at quarterback, I've got Dak and Baker and then Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah,
I got pretty late. And then with the last pick in round 22, I got Colin Kaepernick because why not?
Let's see what happens. Roll the dice.
Well, I mean, in a year, in a super flex league, with somebody tweeted like, oh, why I don't know, like because he hates the country or some nonsense, and I was like, no, because I am literally sticking to sports, you fucking idiot, because it's a super flex league. That rewards points that handsomely rewards mobile quarterbacks in an abbreviated offseason, or no, in a season where there are expanded rosters because of a global pandemic. Like, yes, I will take Colin Kaepernick over Blaine Gabbert with my last.
Why did I not think of that? That's why I was for drafting fast. I could have waited and seen how it played out in other drafts, but
savor the flavor.
I don't know. So I was just sort of like, oh, okay. I didn't, think that was going to get as big of a reaction as it did. But then at running back, I felt like I got a lot of good value because I took Dak early and other people freaked out. In my league, like not, tournament wide, but in my league, people were like, oh no. And then I was able to get Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler, and James Conner. And then I also have Jordan Howard. And we'll talk about him later.
The fear of missing out. No, that's great because you put that into people's heads. You're like, oh shit, I got to take a quarterback now. So it's weird because my draft, we had no runs. Like we didn't really have, so everything was pretty, we didn't have a big quarterback run. They lasted till like the 8th or 9th or 10th. I took Barkley, I was at 102, and then I came back around and took Breeze at 211 and then back to Gurley. So I went pretty heavy running back for most of the draft, but nothing really too egregious. I didn't have to reach for a quarterback super high. Tight ends went pretty good. At least got Jarwin in the 13th. I waited pretty late for them, and at least got Jarwin and Ebron. But I'm pretty happy with my draft. What about you, Gary?
I'm happy. Hopefully you never leave your Scott Fish draft thinking you got a shitty team. So otherwise, what the fuck were you doing for a week? Like you had 8 hours to make your pick. You probably knew what you were doing with your first couple anyway. So I have to ask just about the Dak thing. Like I don't think it's egregious by any means, but did you take Dak as the QB1 in your division? Or
no, as the QB2. So I would have taken. I was hoping Mahomes would fall to me at the 3 spot. I thought maybe it goes CMC, Barkley, and then I could grab Mahomes.
Yeah.
But it went McCaffrey, Mahomes, and then I chose Dak over Lamar Jackson. And I discussed this with Andy Behrens on the Yahoo Fantasy Football podcast yesterday because I let the narrative of accuracy, passing accuracy, enter my decision making. It's not that I don't think Jackson has shown up the haters in terms of his ability as a passer. Yeah. And I do think if Marquise Brown is healthy and Miles Boykin, who to me was like the best 50-50 win percentage receiver in last year's draft, like takes a step forward, then I don't know if I imagine that Jackson can be equally productive but less efficient, if that makes sense, next year, this year. But also when I look at Garrett being out and Kellen Moore committing to the pass and Dak in an interesting contract situation and the weapons, the aerial weapons that he's been gifted with, and his mobility early on in his career, which we have evidence of, I just feel like given the scoring system, he's a better, higher floor option. And at the 3 spot, I don't want to mess around too much.
For sure. That makes sense.
Yeah.
When you started that sentence, you kind of made it seem like you let the narrative get in. Do you regret your decision, or are you happy with Dak over Lamar?
I am very happy with Dak. Okay. I'm also being transparent about the fact that I don't want anyone to be like, well, no, yes, I let the narrative affect me in that pick. And I think people are liars who don't say that they let some of the coach speak or whatever it is surrounding a player affect some of their picks. So I also feel like I see these experts and analysts come on and be like, well, I made this graph and I am so the percentage I am. And it's like, be a fucking human.
Own that shit.
You know what I mean? I let the narrative affect me. He's not the most accurate passer. He had a lights out season. He's obviously wildly talented, but nobody is drafting Lamar for his arm. No. That's just the way it is.
And get your fucking guy. Why did you take Dak? Because I wanted Dak and I knew Lamar wasn't going to be there in the second. So
I also, by the way, we talked about Liz Frank injuries. I don't know if Hollywood Brown is ever going to get fully healthy. So if you don't have, you do have the best contested catch receiver in theory and the best ball tracker of that year's class, of the 2019 class. But like if one of them never gets healthy, then the other one doesn't have a field stretcher and he isn't able to do his damn job. But I think CeeDee Lamb is fire regardless. Amari Cooper is not consistent, but he knows how to run a damn route. And Michael Gallup is due for a breakout. Yep. So statistically speaking, to me, the odds of Dak throwing less interceptions than Jackson is much higher. So for the scoring system, he seems like the more logical choice.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing one of the best ABCs. The best 1A, 1B, 1C that we've probably seen on a field in a very long time because Gallup is still just
they're still
going to
waste it. They're still going to waste it.
So I completely agree. My belief just narratively is that Amari is going to be less boom or bust, and he's just going to be a ton of boom because he's finally going to have someone else in the locker room that's going to be better or at least as good. At worst, he's as good as Amari, or he's better than Amari, and that's going to make Amari play a hell of a lot better and push himself more week in and week out. But that's just my narrative.
I don't think that's wrong. I think that Amari just doesn't have the Dukes to carry an offense. Yeah. In which case, your theory would hold in this ABC offense.
So, yeah, it'll be awesome. And when you win it, you can tell everybody to go fuck off.
I am never going to win it. Let's just right now, week 7, I will give up and stop setting my roster. This is inevitably what's going to happen. I usually again in full transparency around week 11, I'm just oh fuck it, I don't know.
That's not going to be the case if you're leading your division because Dak is putting up Lamar numbers from last year, and your Chubb and your Eckler and your Connor are playing a full 16, and Connor's a top 7 back. These are all within the realistic realm of possibilities, right?
Yeah. They're in
Chubb
the range
run for
of possible
1,800.
Yeah, if you say so, Gary, you know better than anybody.
Yeah.
So if you
I know better than anybody that who the fuck am I to actually win this thing? And all of a sudden, I won this this tournament I've been thinking about for 5 years, and I wasn't even on Twitter until last year.
I gotta start thinking like that.
Yeah.
Who the fuck am I?
The world is your oyster, Liz. I've heard you on other pods talk about your come up into fantasy and how you kind of just took the leap and said, I'm going to do it. So just take the leap into Scott Fish and just do it.
I make the playoffs. It's just that, but thank you, Gary. I'll remember that come week 10 when I just want to throw my laptop across the living room.
Just remember the champ says, fuck that. You do it. Do it to your best.
Somebody make that into a GIF so that we can post it right around that time.
Yeah, that might have to happen. I can totally do that, and I got nothing going on. I will. Damn right. So yeah, let's get into why we're here today. So let's talk about some sleepers now. How do we want to start this off, Gary? Do you want to go with yours, or
I want to go with my question first because
sure.
I struggled with this a bunch. So this is a sleeper show, and obviously we're going to have other shows that are going to be breakout. The values there's all these optimistic words that we can use for what a player could be, euphemisms as to why you should draft someone later. And so I want to know how you define a sleeper, because I genuinely struggled, and we'll see this with some of the players that I picked, that I think that they're very low because I don't know what's a sleeper compared to a breakout. And given we're not talking to breakouts, how do you define a sleeper? So Liz and then Kacey, how do you guys define a sleeper?
Well, I think it depends week to week. So,
but in your drafts,
in drafts, in season, I would say it's under 40% rostered would be a sleeper. And I think once you're into, depending on the position, I think the parameters you put on the doc were after round 9. So once you're into double-digit rounds, is that considered a sleeper or someone who's not even being drafted at all? So, I mean, Deontay Johnson, the worst kept secret of 2020. I don't think he's a sleeper anymore because he's everybody's sleeper. Yeah. But I also think there are certain positions that you can do that with. It's also lunacy to be Drew Lock is my sleeper for 20. All right, you look at the depth of the position and no one's drafting Drew Lock unless you're in a super flex or 2 QB. So I think for me, a sleeper is someone outside of the top 12, but whose name at that position you recognize.
It's so interesting that the two names you just referenced, Deontay Johnson is the reason I created why I said we need to have this just general theoretical conversation, because you look at him and he should be a sleeper. Kevin arbitrarily chose a 9 to 10 round. I don't think that was anything specific, right? You were just
Yeah,
you wrote in the show doc like where you were looking.
Yeah, like anything 9th or 10th. I guess you could have really done somebody maybe that can tier jump into, maybe a QB1, RB1, tight end 1, wide receiver 1. But I thought that was a pretty good kind of dividing line, I guess. Remember a couple months ago, by the way, when Robert Woods was a sleeper?
Well, there's no way that guy was ever a sleeper. Like, he was always going to be drafted high. He was enough of a name. So, like, I don't even know if a round, and I apologize, Casey, I'm inserting my opinion here. It's specifically to the Drew Lock. So I didn't know what to do when I saw, I joined the show doc a little bit late, saw Stafford and Ben were there, who I absolutely love. And then Newton was there, which made a lot of sense. And so I was looking at it, I was like, man, do I want to do Drew Lock? I don't have enough faith in him that I didn't want to put my name on him, but I felt like he is that range of person. Like normally it would be Jimmy G for me. And most people aren't going to be taking Jimmy G as their QB1. But so like that to me is the conversation when you said, is it someone you're realistically taking as a QB1? Because I think Drew Lock is a top 18 quarterback. So he could fit in there. Not to debate the merits of Drew Lock right now, but just, I don't know. So Casey, what do you see as defining a sleeper?
I was thinking, these guys that nobody thinks of. And I was putting out guys' names and people were like, that's not a sleeper. That's a dude that like you can probably get like in week 4 when somebody's hurt. I'm like, okay, I guess that's not what a sleeper is. To me, a sleeper is just, I feel like a sleeper is a guy that's always on this list. That's what a sleeper is. Every year it's like the same guys, but I think it's just those guys on that team that have the potential to break out. Yes. Even if it's just, for a few of the weeks, you can plug and play. Those are my kind of sleepers, the guys that like or even the guys that have shown that they have done it in the past. Yeah. But they're the guys that are getting taken way late. Those are also, the guys that I go after in the sleeper category.
I think anyone who is being drafted outside of the top 12, but could end up as a starting quarterback in fantasy is a sleeper at that position. And then wide receiver is like, can you put up wide receiver 3 numbers, but you're being drafted outside of the top 50? Running back is like, could you put up RB2 numbers, but you're being drafted at, outside of the top 35 to 40. Yeah. In season, I write the sleepers articles for Yahoo and I have to do a segment. It's called Fantasy Damage every week. Yep. And some weeks, like the fantasy gods give you options. Like I hit on Darius Slayton. That was a true sleeper. Nobody believed in him. He was, 0% rostered. He was a name that nobody was aware of. And I, for whatever reason, like had my argument and went for it. And that worked out. That was a real true sleeper. But some weeks you're like, well, nobody really got hurt. Yeah. The matchups don't work out in such a way. So like, I'm going to say that Jamison Crowder is, you know what I mean? Like some shitty name could pull off something over in PPR.
Okay.
Sorry.
I love it.
But like, I think if somebody is being drafted outside of a starting position, but could end up a fantasy starter at the end of the season, then you have your sleeper.
Yeah. So let's go back to Casey. Cause as far as sleepers go, your pick here was basically because of injury. So people may not have him on their mind, but I mean, if you've been under a rock, everybody's talking about the quarterback that you picked, Casey. So, who's your quarterback sleeper?
My quarterback sleeper is Matthew Stafford. Yay! Round of applause. Again, when I was talking about sleepers that are guys that are on this list every year, I feel like he's on this list every year because people underestimate what Matthew Stafford does because he's not this sexy name. I know that's a term that's been thrown around a lot about players is they're not a sexy name. Matthew Stafford just isn't on people's radars. And it's mind-boggling to me, considering that when he's healthy, the things that he can do, especially fantasy purposes. I don't know. Marvin Jones, I'm big on this year. that's another guy that it's like every year. But I mean, Matthew Stafford broke his back, basically. He broke his back last year, and if he would have continued to play, and they didn't have these scrub quarterbacks coming in. I mean, he was on par to be close to his best season if he would have just stayed healthy. I mean, Kenny Golladay, he's going to benefit from Stafford being healthy. Hawkinson, TJ Hawkinson, I think he's, also going to benefit. I mean, there's a lot of targets there for Matt, and I just think that where he's being drafted, over, him or Kirk Cousins, I think, Matthew Stafford's who I'd go for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Stafford, he was QB6, but from weeks 1 to 9 before he got hurt. Mm-hmm. I just think, Darrell Bevell's going to be having him throw the rock again, with Marvin Jones, with Golladay, with Hawkinson. He's got guys around him, Swift, with his pass catching chops. All those guys, it's really a great offensive situation for that team. We don't know what we have in the running game. We have Kerryon Johnson who can't stay on the field, and then you got Swift. How that's going to shake out, we have no idea. But what we do know is that they can pass the ball and pass it vertically. So that's, Matthew Stafford's fantastic after the top 12. And yeah, he's going to sneak into the top 12 in some drafts, but by and large, you can get him around QB 13, 14, 15.
And I think ultimately, like, the big question with Stafford is going to be, now that they've invested yet again a strong high second round pick in Swift, and they have Kerryon where they can try and balance each other's load. Are they going to try and take some of that off of Stafford? Are they trying to create more of a heavier rushing attack to be able to get, what they did last year, but with more of a rushing emphasis to try and get the play action?
But I think that actually works in Stafford's favor, because there's a stat that I discovered, which was that not only, to Casey's point, was he on pace to be a top 10 fantasy option, but he was also on pace for 36 rushing attempts, which was his highest number of rushing attempts. He's not known, obviously, for being the most mobile of quarterbacks, but that was his highest rushing attempt in, my goodness, I want to say how many years? Quite a few.
I feel like I should have that somewhere, because I wrote down a lot that I can't read.
Feels like he's been in the league forever.
Since 2016. It was nearly 36 rush attempts, which is a higher total than he'd put up since 2016. And when you look at what Bevell has done, who was the last quarterback that he worked with? Yeah. Oh, Russell Wilson. And what era? I mean, if you look at I bet all of you, if you look at your top 8 quarterbacks, I bet none of them, except if you're really high on Brady, which I think is a mistake, are all mobile quarterbacks. This is new era NFL. Bevell knows how to make it happen. And I think that Stafford will rush a little bit more, and having a back like Swift or even a tandem with Kerryon in the backfield is going to help those numbers. So, I do a thing on my Instagram called Would You Rather, where I put 2 players at the same position and kind of ask people, I have my own answer, but ask people like, which of these would you rather draft? And it was between Carson Wentz and Matt Stafford. So I will pose the question to you. I chose Matt Stafford because I think despite Wentz's fresher legs and potential ceiling, the weapons that Stafford has and the revitalization that Bevell has brought to that offense lead me to believe that Stafford I would prefer to have again, given his ADP, over Wentz.
Yeah, I'm going to say Stafford. I mean, I like Wentz and all, but like there are question marks yet again in that offense, and like who's going to be the pass catchers outside of the tight ends. It's funny you use those 2. I don't know if you know it. They're back to back right now at Fantasy Football Calculator, going 12th and 13th. I think 13 is a steal for Stafford. I think I can't even remember what we had him at. I think I have him as like my QB 9 or something for the season. Sky's the limit. Kenny Golladay is fucking awesome. I just love him, and Marvin Jones too. So, Kevin, you were saying?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that I'm all about Stafford over Wentz because we have to depend on Wentz to throw to his tight ends again and to develop a rapport from in week 1 for Jalen Reagor. I mean, who knows what's going to happen with Deshaun Jackson? Jeffrey is likely to hit the pup. So then we got to depend on Marquise Goodwin too, or Sanders out of the backfield. I mean, give me Stafford and his weapons, way higher ceiling anyway, because the bottom could fall out of that offense at any time.
Again.
Top tier of NFL QBs that you want to chug a beer with. Matt Stafford's elite. He's top 3, right? Like always. I would love to chug a beer with him. He just strikes me as the type of guy that's like, I want to chug a beer with
like
you.
Probably him now, because I feel like all the other guys would be like, why are you hanging out with a 21-year-old? I don't have to like explain why I was hanging out with, Patrick Mahomes or whatever.
I don't have that problem.
Like I say, if I had to choose a guy, maybe.
I was actually thinking like Steph's a little old for me. I don't know. Fair enough.
I do not
That's a very good
discriminate when an NFL quarterback wants to chug a beer with me, as long as it's not Aaron Rodgers. We're good.
Hey, I don't drink beer. I don't drink beer, so I feel like if I was chugging a beer versus Aaron Rodgers, I have the best chance of looking cool because I don't drink. So I'd be like, but at least I'm not Aaron. You'd
still
Rodgers.
beat him.
Yeah.
Bakhtiari, on the other hand.
Oof.
Yeah. That dude can chug. So Liz, let's get to your quarterback. Pretty much a lot of the same with you chose Big Ben, with offensive weapons around. He was obviously hurt after week 1 last year. So the kind of the same deal with the injury. But Big Ben, yeah.
Well, so I mentioned that he's the key to opening up so much of an offense and so many key fantasy pieces, right? And so that was why I started the Russ versus Russ series with him. And I mean, Dr. Weber told me that he believed that the right elbow was at no greater risk for re-injury than the left, which has never been compromised. And in fact, he was more worried about a 38-year-old player coming back from a long layoff than his throwing being hampered. He fully expects him to have a cannon. We also know if that's the worry, well, we look at Big Ben, and no player likes to play hurt and tell you about it than Big Ben, right? Like he likes to put on his Steelers hero cape and do the work. So again, and then I'm also thinking like, okay, so he's got he needs to shake off some rust. So what's the opening schedule look like for Roethlisberger? Because the first 4 weeks, the first month of the season, assuming we start on time, are key to him being able, are those matchups easy enough that he can shake off rust without potentially getting sacked and breaking a rib or getting some sort of other injury? Well, he's got the Giants in week 1. Come on.
Yeah.
Right.
Come on.
In week 2, the Steelers host the Broncos. So we know he's got home field advantage, which normally we don't need to mention, but in Ben's case, we do.
Yeah.
The Broncos, that is perfect timing to grab the Broncos because while I expect them to eventually shake off their own defensive rush, given the holes that they're filling and the regime change that they're experiencing on that side of the ball, Jarrell Casey's going to be a stud, and so will AJ Bouye, but it's going to take a minute, and I'm not sure it's going to be there week 2. So that timing seems really perfect for the Steelers. Then they've got the Texans. And by the way, Houston allowed the 5th most passing scores and 6th fewest sacks in 2019, so not a worry. And then in week 4, they'll go to Nashville to take on the Dean Pease-less Titans. That's key that Pease won't be there. And I think that, we were talking about Jarrell Casey, obviously. That pass rush is going to be in a different place without Casey as part of it. So when I look at the first month of his season, I think he has a really good strength of schedule to be able to return to form and get that game speed back.
Yeah. I forgot that the Broncos got Bouye and Casey, and they got Casey for a steal. The Titans are ridiculous. I can't believe they let him walk. Yeah, I think that's awesome. Everybody's always going to just default to the AB thing and the fact that he's not there. But it's I think without, disregard the fact that AB is really what it is was an amazing wide receiver. Really one of the best when he was for his 5-year span. I actually like their total wide receivers, I think, a little bit more what they should have this year between Juju, Johnson, Washington, Eric Ebron, Vance McDonald, Connor,
Claypool.
Samuel, Claypool, sorry, thank you. Yeah. And it's just like there's so many weapons for him to spread it around and allow a veteran quarterback to be able to like amend potentially. Like you said, it's potentially not an issue, but if you're still on the mend, like have options available and let a smart, intelligent quarterback figure out what the hell he wants to do.
One of the best
options.
Impro quarterbacks in the league. And also, like, I remember talking to an insider, I can't say who it was, but he was telling me that towards the end of AB's career in Pittsburgh, things were getting crazy because AB was breaking routes because he wanted all the high value red zone targets. Yeah. And so he would just break off of a route and not follow the play that was just discussed in the huddle. Yeah. And so Roethlisberger was being forced to feed him the ball and things were, and now that doesn't exist. Like now everyone will be deferential to Big Ben, especially after last year when they had that duck hunter under center. So come on.
And you got to figure too, they didn't go after anybody to back up Ben. So they got to be feeling pretty good about his elbow.
Hell yeah. They have to.
So I think a top 12 finish, again, is in Big Ben's range of possible outcomes. I'm not drafting him because of the obvious risk within my top 12, but just outside of it, he's a great value play if you want to wait on the position.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to go with me. All right.
Yeah, let's jump with you just because it kind of follows in the last year injuries. So.
Yeah, so I feel like I kind of snaked this one from Liz with Cam Newton.
I feel like
I overtalked it at the top. I'm sorry.
Hey, it is what it is. But so he's gone up about 4 rounds in ADP since he got signed on June 30th. Although he's up to the 10th round right now per Fantasy Football Calculator. So last time Cam Newton was healthy, it was 2018. But if he can find some good health, he's a top 12 guy, no matter how you slice it. I mean, he's going to bring up those weapons. He's used to having a big-bodied guy, a high-point guy in N'Keal Harry. He's got a slot receiver in Julian Edelman. He's got James White. He's got guys in Belichick around him who can work with him. And I just want to know why it took so long for a team to sign him, if it was COVID related or what. But the rushing, I think that's going to take a little bit of a step back, but I still think he has some of that rushing touchdown upside. Maybe just not obviously when we were used to in Carolina, but if he can establish N'Keal Harry and get him on the same page, because he never really got a chance to develop a rapport with Brady. I think Cam Newton's just on that tight end or on quarterback 12 fringe, at least this year. I've got him. I'm bringing him up. I've got him at QB 14 right now, but I'm doing a lot of shuffling, and I think he can be on that more of that fringe as we get later on. If hopefully we can have some football here.
Why do you think his rushing is going to go down? I'm always curious when people bring this up because I kind of feel, I don't know his rushing stats. I feel the opposite though.
Well, just a bit of the, is getting older and it's attrition. And, I think they want to keep him healthy, behind that line. But I do like Brady, or I'm sorry. I do like Newton with those weapons. I think that he is going to continue to be slept on. But like I said, his ADP went up 4 rounds. And some of the best balls that I've done, he's starting to creep up into the top 15. But with Belichick there, we know he knows how to scheme an offense and tailor it around what he's got. And I think he can be a top 12 guy.
Can I provide I want to provide a counter to everything you said was awesome. I completely
Please
agree with
do.
you. It's just the idea of his rushing decreasing. Okay. So why wasn't he signed? We don't know. He was signed by the Pats after the June 15th, whatever cutoff, if I'm saying that correctly. And there was no way for the Pats to know they were going to get him. They signed him to this very low prove-it deal, like close to veteran minimum, right? Yeah. With like 7 million max, I think is what it's at for a 1 year. So take that and then say, you, Kevin, you love Todd Gurley. You say he got a 1 year prove-it deal. They're going to run the shit out of him. and do whatever the fuck they want because they got a 1-year deal and they're going to run it into the ground. And you are now giving Bill Belichick, who wanted Tim Tebow, who has always said that like he talks about all these schemes of using a running quarterback. He is going to do everything that he wants. And to say that he's getting older, he's Cam. He's a beast of nature. He defies all of that stuff. If it wasn't for COVID, maybe he would have been signed. Maybe he's not. Maybe they don't like his personality. Who knows? I genuinely believe he is about to have this amazing season. I can't rank him as high as I think he will be because I don't trust his wide receivers. 2015 Cam and his shitty wide receivers is not 2020 Cam. I'll agree there because you do have shoulder. You do have other issues. But when it comes to his feet and what he's going to be doing and carrying that offense, dude, it is going to be fun. I can't wait to see Bill Belichick without Tom Brady and with a mobile quarterback saying, let's do it. Like, let's show the NFL what my brain and what this guy can do.
I 100% agree with you, Gary. I think like Bill Belichick is an evil genius. And if he he got the best toy on I'm in the Popples like the Popples division in the fishbowl. That is the best toy that is always at reduced price. And that is basically what Bill Belichick did, right? He got the like cheap ass Care Bear and he is going to do whatever he wants with it on 1 year. Why not? He can build next year. I 100% agree. And Cam has never been more motivated. And to the point about character, like, because I think you're right. I think a lot of other teams were like, well, I don't know what he wears. And like, is it worth the risk? Could he be a distraction? Bill Belichick doesn't give a fuck about that. He doesn't. I did a show. I did 24 episodes of Mostly Football with Martellus Bennett, who would say straight up, Marty Bennett was, I mean, that's a personality.
Yeah, unicorn.
And Marty and Bill got along beautifully. Marty calls Robert Kraft brother Kraft, like, because all and nobody is more dedicated to football than Martellus Bennett. Bill Belichick Marty would say every week, like, he didn't care if I was into animation or any of my stuff because on the football field, I respected the game and he'd keep these journals of X's and O's. And Cam has a similar respect and joy of competition. And that is what Bill cares about. He doesn't, I mean, Jesus Christ, like Rob Gronkowski is a walking sideshow.
Exactly. Exactly. Like,
you know, it didn't matter. We're just making a point of Cam because we're making a point of Cam.
If Cam goes down due to injury because they overwork him, where do the Patriots end up? Exactly where they would have if they didn't get Cam because they waited so long to sign him. They were willing to go into the season with Stidham and all of his faults and Hoyer, who I actually like more than Stidham, and just say we're going to figure it out in 2021. So in my mind, this is a win-win. There's no loss situation because you already thought maybe we're just playing for 21 and just kind of go from there.
Doesn't work out. You get Alex Smith. Fine. That's Jared Stidham. I mean, you get like Alex Smith before the injury when he was a hero. That's it. It's the reverse 49ers.
You get Jameis Winston after Sean Payton taught him how to not throw interceptions. But I love everything you said. It's just the rushing thing. I'm not picking on you. It's just this is like a common refrain that I'm hearing, and I just am always like, I don't get it. Like I would be more than happy to have Cam.
I baited him into that.
Well done, Kevin.
All right. Well, now that I just went on my tangent there. So I went a little bit different than you guys. You guys went with kind of the 3 2019 question marks going into 2020. And I went with, I guess, a question mark because I went with the rookie. And I should say, like, Jimmy G is my answer to this question. It always will be. But he was my plant my flag, which was the episode we did last week. Same as my tight end that I would choose was my plant my flag because obviously you usually want to go with guys that are kind of sleeper appeal. So instead of Jimmy G, I really wanted to go with Joe Burrow. The Cincinnati offense, I don't think people are sleeping on it. I think they're sleeping on the pieces of it. And I think as a whole, like the actual offense from just from pure NFL perspective is going to be one of these things where we finish 2020 being like, that was fucking fun. Like that was awesome. I don't know that Joe Burrow is going to blow anyone out of the water per se, but like the rookie QB bar is very low. Baker was 24 touchdowns that tied the record. I think that Joe Burrow has a very, very strong chance to beat that. We know he's the starter QB going in. We have an offensive-minded coach with Zach Taylor. Then we have what's pretty close to, if not a Hall of Famer, in AJ Green. We have Tyler Boyd, who is sending back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. They drafted T. Higgins high in the second. And we have John Ross, who was, I think, the 8th overall pick, total speedster. So you have those 4 wide receivers. You don't have a ton at tight end, but that's fine because you have Joe Mixon and you have Gio, Joe Mixon is an amazing runner, an amazing pass catcher. Some will say he's one of the top 5 all-around backs. And the biggest reason that people poo-poo the offense is because of the offensive line. Well, the offensive line drafted Jonah Williams to be their left tackle last year. He tore his ACL going in, but in college, I'm pretty sure I'm right in this stat, Jonah Williams never allowed, I believe, a sack in his entire 4 years at Alabama. And they also signed a couple free agents. They signed Suafilo, 29-year-old. Anyway, they brought in people to try and make this offensive line better. And I genuinely believe that with Jonah Williams, an offensive line, not all they need, but having one anchor position changes everything. And on top of that, if the offensive line breaks down, Joe Burrow ran for almost 400 yards. He ran for 399 in 2018 and 368 in 399 in 2018 and 368 in 2019 with 5 touchdowns. What do you want in a rookie quarterback? You want him to, throw some touchdowns with some quality wide receivers. You want him to have a rushing floor so that if the play breaks down, what's he going to do? He's just going to rely on his natural athletic ability and go for there. There have been a lot of people that have said the season that Joe Burrow just had, and I'm not a college follower, to be perfectly honest, so I'm going off of all the analysis that I can read, that his season last year at LSU was probably the single greatest quarterback college season we've seen. He threw for 5,660 touchdowns. Granted, he had great wide receivers. Cool. He has great wide receivers. It's a different level, and he's got to learn. The only thing that I'm concerned about is really just what happens with your offense, your off-season activities. How much is he able to learn? I really wanted them to keep Andy Dalton because I thought Dalton would allow a transition. He would teach Burrow in the offseason a lot of what's going on, but ultimately it was Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor is also a newer coach. Dalton didn't even have the amount of games to necessarily learn all that anyway, so that's not a big deal. Joe Burrow seems smart enough. He seems talented enough, athletic enough. He's going right now as a QB 19 off the board. I think in a lot of leagues, at QB 19, take any of these guys we've talked about and take Joe Burrow after him. If Ben's arm doesn't work out, if Stafford's back acts up, if Cam's foot acts up, or just they decide they don't want to use him, if Jimmy G, who I referenced, isn't able to do it, boom, you have a QB 1-2, and you're using such low value picks on them that you could drop either one.
Speechless.
I get really into it.
I was like, wow.
I mean, Garrett, all of your points are spot on. The thing that gives everyone the most pause, if any other offseason, we'd all be in. But in a COVID year, I think so. But in a year of COVID, where, I guess we're starting training camp, what does that look like? And I have trouble buying. I know the argument for the offensive line and the anchor positions. And again, in any other season, sure. But the line is also, as we've learned, the most dependent on chemistry. That is the hardest fixture within an offense to work properly, that is based purely on people's pheromones liking each other really well. It's just not a scientific this piece and that piece. It is so dependent on rapport and chemistry, and without proper reps, I'm just worried that that's not going to turn over. All of these players, I think I loved when you were talking about Ben's elbow or Cam's foot or any of these other pieces, but the benefit that they have is pre-existing chemistry, and that is the thing that is working against Burrow, not just with his O-line, not just with his receivers, not just with his coach, but all of those factors together. So, but your other point about him obviously being someone who has faced adversity, moved teams, been able to overcome, has an incredible processing speed, has the potential to do all those things. I'm high on him too. I think he's like my QB 15, QB 14, something like that, ranked in the same position of guys that we've just been talking about. The continuity is the reason I am less willing to bet on him.
And that totally makes sense. And I see the downside. I rarely will ever take a rookie that's not a running back. This is one of the few times where I will, and maybe it's just like the Mahomes bump that we want to try and get a piece of what could be type thing. But he's one of the few people that I've ever thought like this. The stars are kind of aligning, especially because they have a shitty defense. Like he's going to have to throw. Yeah. At best, they have an average defense. It's not going to go above that. And so they at least are going to have to stay in the games. They're playing against the Steelers, they're playing against the Ravens, and they're playing against the Browns for 6 games out of the season. So ultimately, to me, it comes down to in a normal, 15, 18 round draft, you're probably getting him after all of your starters are filled out. You've already filled out a few of your bench spots, and it's just a decision of how do you play quarterback. If you go early on a quarterback, and you then do want to back them up just in case, like he's the total high upside guy for the back half of the season as he starts to have stuff click. And if you wait, I also think, again, like I am a QB waiter, and I will go until as late as I can until my like tier break. And I will just do like boom, boom, just get to see what works, find at least one that has a good, like you said, opening month schedule. If you ever are waiting on QBs, like you always need to look at the schedule for the first 3 or 4 games, which like Jimmy G has an amazing schedule to open the season.
Wink, wink.
And I think this is a year also with expanded. I mean, I know Yahoo's like expanding their roster, so maybe you add him in a year you would normally add a QB2 in a standard redraft. So maybe you add Burrow and give him that time to make sure everything aligns. And also, he comps similarly to Jared Goff coming out of the draft. Well, because think about it. I mean, Daniel Jeremiah murdered everybody when he said that Joe Burrow was Tom Brady. But if you read Jared Goff's comps coming out, it's like shitty Tom Brady. So it makes sense that Joe Burrow is what people thought Jared Goff might be. Yeah. And also, what's the coach? Why is his name? Zach Taylor was Jared Goff's quarterback coach. Yeah. So there's some more. So in a world of not continuity, there's a very important piece. For sure. That could buoy him. I think I am going to take 2 quarterbacks this year for the first time in I don't know how a decade, and I would like to take Burrow as my second backup in case Cam or Ben, who I like waiting on, don't make it past October.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's switch into running backs. And Casey, we didn't forget about you, I promise. Why don't you give us your running back sleeper? You're sitting in the corner there.
I'm taking it all in. I'm learning some good little gems right now. But we're moving on to running back now. I'm just chilling. My chill running back that I decided to take right here as a sleeper pick is Tariq Cohen. You may know him from a little team called the Chicago Bears. I don't know if you've heard of them or not, Kevin.
Who?
But the reason I'm doing that is mainly because the targets, receptions, his receiving yards the last 2 seasons have been in the top 10. He's always been productive. Last year was crappier, but he still had more going for him than like you actually, he's one of those players that, wow, when you hear that there's stats of this, that, and the other, you're like, really? I don't even remember that happening. And I think Tariq Cohen's kind of that guy. Hey, I don't even remember him happening, but then he happens. The Chicago Bears are something else. When it comes to fantasy, it's Allen Robinson. But still, with the quarterback situation there, picking up Foles and everything else, and not to say that Mitch Trubisky equals Foles, vice versa, one's better than the other. I really freaking don't know. Like, it's just too all over the place for me to even make a conclusion there. But I think that there will be competition there, and that'll kind of push, the quarterback position more. Hopefully that ends up with Tariq Cohen having more carries, having PPR. He's a stud. We've seen it in the past, and I think that this season it needs to click. It has to click. It just has to. And if it doesn't, then it's going to be, shit show for a while. But Tariq Cohen, that's who I'm going to go with.
I love it. Absolutely love it. I was bummed when I saw both your and Liz's that I was just like, man, I want like both of those guys. The thing everybody talks about, like the Foles to Trubisky thing, and whether or not it's going to be a big enough bump. I don't give a shit if it's a big enough bump, because at worst, last season he had 79 receptions for almost 500 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he had another couple hundred on the ground.
He had the quietest 100 targets of anybody I can remember.
It's just right? You just, that blew my mind when I was reading that stuff today. I was like, wait, am I looking at the wrong stats for the wrong player? Like, what the hell's happening? Who did I click on?
And so let's just say, like, so the year before he was at 91. Let's just say he's at a 90 floor for his targets, and that those targets are going to be a tiny bit better. Maybe they're going to have a little bit higher depth of target. That yardage is going to get closer to the 700 that he had the year before. He's probably going to be a little bit more integrated and be able to get some of those red zone touches, be able to get some touchdowns and just some yardage in general, because it's not as if David Montgomery blew anyone's socks off. And once you have a competent QB who can actually throw, you're not stacking the box, just like everything just piles up. I think Tariq Cohen is just one of those guys that if you can get him, especially as like an RB4-ish, RB5, depending on how you're drafting, like you will very realistically having him in your flex spot on almost week-to-week basis in a PPR league, just because he's going to have that really nice floor with a possible upside.
Again, silence.
Sorry,
no,
guys.
no, Cohen. No, Cohen I love just because it can't get worse than it was last year in Chicago. Just the extreme inefficiency. Just for the record, in 2019, he averaged 4.4 yards per target, which is historically low. Typically, running backs, you see them around the 6 mark, and going through some running backs, the next highest was Royce Freeman at 5.1 yards per target. So it can only go up for Cohen as far as his efficiency, running the ball when he does get the chance to, and receiving. I'm fully happy with Tariq Cohen as my RB2 if I had to just, basically do a modified 0 RB and take my stud and then just fill it out with some satellite backs and guys like that. But Tariq Cohen's a good target there. I think it gets much better with Foles. I think he's going to end up making the majority of the starts there in Chicago this year.
I don't agree with anything. I'm out.
Why? But like,
that's cool.
Is it the offense or is it him?
No, well, number one, I think the burnt takes on David Montgomery are so fucking hilarious. Like, cool. You got burnt by a guy. Like, guess what? Can he be the RB25? Well, he's being drafted at the RB25, so don't come at me about like risk. Like, that's fine. Also, I think the reason that you saw an elevated target volume from Tariq Cohen was because Anthony Miller wasn't healthy. So now if Anthony Miller is going to be your fucking sleeper, you're betting on him being healthy and that target volume going up. So what does that do for Cohen? Because the dude ain't a workhorse. I get it. I don't want to mess with that backfield unless I'm taking Montgomery, who is not an inspiring player by any means, but I don't think is going to underperform via where he's going. He was the RB25 last year. Sure, he could do that again. Absolutely.
But isn't that a fantasy take? It's so like, to me, like my comment is like Montgomery didn't blow anyone's socks off, as in like the coach's socks off. Granted, he's a rookie and like they were moving pieces, whatnot. But it leaves still the door open that Cohen is more than likely going to be very heavily involved as a third down back.
I mean,
he is going to be there.
I hear it's not like we know Montgomery can catch, and we also know that the scheming that Nagy did at the top of the year with Wims and Cordarrelle Patterson was fucking nobody was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense, right? My Packers fan over there was loving the season opener, right? Like, absolutely. So none of it makes any sense. Also, Ryan Pace, like, let's just talk about the male ego for a second. And this is something that doesn't happen on fantasy shows.
I'm here for this. Let's go.
Ryan Pace is attaching his legacy. Remember when Ryan Pace was named the GM of the Bears, the youngest GM in NFL history at the time?
The fanfare
Yes, from the Sean Payton School of Aggressive and Creative Coaching. And he staked all of his reputation on the success of Mitch Trubisky. There are too many goddamn Patrick Mahomes gifts out there for me to re-explain what that means. So he's already letting go of that with the addition of Nick Foles, who has been coached by everybody on that offensive staff.
Yeah.
I don't think he's also going to say, I whiffed on the running back, a position that doesn't really matter. Shit. Like, I still think that I think he is going to say to Nagy, you got to make something work. And if Montgomery isn't it, then he's not it. But I don't think Montgomery's a bad player. I think he's uninspiring. I think he is Jordan Howard-esque. And also, Jordan Howard's my sleeper. Like, I think that I just don't see Cohen matching what he did last year, again, when you're factoring in the opportunity that Miller will have when healthy. So, I mean, that's part of it. Again, I'm not against it in a high PPR league. Like, will I flex him some weeks, matchup dependent? Yeah. Sure, but he's not an active target of mine because I don't foresee a copy and paste of the 2019 season.
I have a question. So for David Montgomery, do you say over or under 275 touches?
That's a good line.
I will tell you his line for last year. He had 35 targets for 25 receptions and 242 rushes. So all I'm doing is adding 10 more touches over the course of a season, and you still get Cohen's output. And as we saw, Cohen went from 10 yards of reception down to 5.8 yards of reception, or the yards per target, as Kevin said, 4.4. And those numbers just stay the same, and all you do is just elevate a couple yards, a few yards, and he goes from 500 yards reception to 700 yards reception because he's getting close to that 100 reception mark. I mean, close-ish to it. So you're still getting this built-in floor of like let's just say like an 800 or 900 total yards and, 4 to 6 touchdowns. Like that's a floor. And that's not saying that Montgomery gets more. That's just saying Montgomery gets what we expect him to get. Exactly. My draw for Montgomery is that I think he's closer to, if you bet on him, you're saying, and by bet, I mean, I'm still saying an RB3, RB4, that you wanted to get closer to 300 touches rather than 275.
I mean, 275 is like 17 total touches per week on a 16-game season, right? So, So the question is, do you think he'll see over 18, or do you think he'll see that 15 to 18? And I think it's more realistic, I will give you, that he will average 15 to 18 total touches per week. I, however, don't think it is not within his range of possible outcomes to hit 18 plus.
Your thing that really stuck with me that made me be like, man, maybe I do have Cohen a little high is the Miller. And then kind of the third piece of this, and I don't have any idea how to view him, and that's Riley Ridley, he's kind of getting some puff. People say that he's going to be there, but it's a wide receiver 3, but like
the Twitterati,
like they're coming on, like, I don't know. So, but if Miller played a whole 16, then that will take from Tariq Cohen. Problem is, like, we haven't seen him play a whole 16. So,
right. It's offense I don't really want a part of. Outside of Allen Robinson, right? Because he's going to see 140 at least looks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's out of my man, Nick Foles.
I love Nick Foles.
I love Nick Foles. Super flex. Nick Foles is awesome. If it wasn't for like the weird SFB scoring that like dropped you for efficiency, and because I just don't want to bet on efficiency, like in a normal league, QB3 for a super flex, Nick Foles all the time.
I just ultimately don't think that this is an offense I want to be I will take Allen Robinson because he's has such a high floor, and I think he's like a top 10 producer because of volume. Target is king. I don't mind a later round flyer on Miller because I think he's an exceptional talent. So only because thank God for the burnt takes because they're depressing Montgomery's at ADP.
Yeah.
I will also take him as my RB3. But everyone else, I'm like, I don't really want to mess with this. Like, I just don't. I'm also
the three of us.
Bears.
There we go. You just froze up for a second.
I'm also a Bears fan. So.
I see.
It's all right. It could be worse. It could be a Vikings fan. So that's fine with me.
Yeah, it could be worse. You would have given us a 3 and a 4th round pick to move up one spot to get. Oh wait, you said you're a Bears fan. Never mind.
Snap.
Actually, I think it's a perfect timing to say, you're not the biggest fan of Tariq Cohen, so sell us on why your RB pick is your sleeper, given your previous affinity probably for him.
So from one Bear to a former Bear, it's Jordan Howard.
Mm-hmm.
I think obviously Burita is like the flashier pick with the high end speed and the burst, and he's coming from the uber friendly scheme with the brief postseason appearance. And Howard, similarly to Montgomery, he's like a dull plotter. He's got bad hands, and he's on his 3rd team in 5 years. So I understand why people are just like, it's not an exciting pick, it's not a flashy pick, but he not only touched the ball with more frequency than Burrito last season, he also posted at least 6 goal line attempts and cleared 7 scores in back-to-back years in 2018 and 2019, which shows me his floor. And I'm not worried about Laird, Peter, what's the name?
Patrick
Peter.
Peter Overzet and Laird kind of they blend together.
Laird and Savior, right? I'm not worried about the other Kalen Balaj. So I understand that players who quote fall into the end zone aren't those that are exciting, but they put up points and touchdowns still matter. And so I think, I don't know, can I see? I can imagine a scenario in which Howard scores another 6 to 8 touchdowns, and if he's my RB3, great.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if we're getting a little feedback here. But yeah, Jordan Howard. I love Jordan Howard. As far as where you're getting him, he was my RB4 in Scott Fishbowl. I just love, he's completely unsexy. He's not going to win any pageants, but he's just going to be solid for what he is. Get you 68 touchdowns, do it, just very kind of ho-hum. But he's going to be good in that ascendant offense. I know Gary loves that offense in Miami. Gary, you still there?
Yeah, I'm trying to see if that just fixed it. For some reason, I thought it was my mic. All right, I think it fixed it. Did you ask me a question? I literally unplugged as you asked me that question then.
Oh, no, because I was saying I know how much you love that Miami offense.
Thank you. Yes. I absolutely love that offense. I think that they've rebuilt their offensive line on the fly. I can't think who they drafted. Austin Howard. I can't remember. But they took a high pick. They obviously, I'm a huge Fitzpatrick fan for fantasy purposes, even if it's going to be a down year. I just like the team. I like what they're doing. And I've actually always loved Howard since he came out. A 5th round pick doing what he did. It's almost, he's Alfred Morris that had more staying power. And he has been around, and he's moved from the Bears to the Eagles, and both teams he showed up, even though he did let down from what he did in his first couple of years. But that's fine with me. I think he's on a prove it deal if I remember correctly. And yeah, Breeda's there. I'm actually happy that Breeda's there. Allow Jordan Howard to end up getting red zone touches. Fitzpatrick was the number 1 rusher for the team last year. So Laird's nothing. And if he's the type of guy that you're getting so late that you're probably going to get close to 1,000 yards, if not over, and you're probably going to get 6 to 8 touchdowns. And what else do you want out of a back that you're going to be getting probably in the RB30s? That's exactly it. he is someone that I would take 10 out of 10 times over Tariq Cohen. I don't know what their ADP is, and I didn't pull it up right now. So I'm dealing with the mic, but 10 out of 10. Always going to take Howard over Cohen. I think Howard is the last starting running back that you can get on an NFL roster. And there's no reason, like, the only reason you don't want them is because you think that the Dolphins are going to fall apart. And if you believe that, like, I feel like you haven't been watching football to know that they are an ascending offense that's going to be getting better. They're still a shitty offense, but they're getting better. They're making the steps, and I don't know. I'm just excited to see what happens there, especially once we have Preston Williams back. We haven't really seen the two, Parker Williams plus Gesicki, all, if they're working well and Fitzpatrick is doing something, you bet your ass they're not going to be stacking the box. They're going to be worried about Fitzpatrick throwing all over them. What's the worst thing in the NFL? Getting embarrassed by Ryan Fitzpatrick, right?
He went to Harvard. I don't know if you knew that.
And also, when Tua comes back and he's mobile, there will be more holes opened up. And we're all expecting Tua to like see the field by Halloween. So
I do not. I think he'll redshirt it. I think that with everything else going on with COVID and whatnot, I genuinely believe that they will redshirt him.
Well,
there's no reason to put him out there.
In the Scott Fish Bowl, you take Fitzpatrick and Tua, or at least that's what I did.
I think it's super smart, and especially in a league like that. I thought that it was an amazing thing.
And I got Howard, so I mean, as my fourth running back,
we'll just start calling you Flipper.
Well, let's stay in the division at least, because my running back sleeper is Zach Moss. Now, as far as his ADP, he's going in that 10th round range too. I mean, he's going around, Chase Edmonds, Latavius Murray, Justin Jackson, Kerryon Johnson. I'd rather have him over any of those guys. He's pretty much been slated for that Frank Gore role in that Buffalo run game. So you're talking about 150 carries, 160 carries with touchdown upside. I think it's going to be him and Josh Allen as far as rushing touchdowns. I think Singletary's more going to be confined to that 20 to 20 yard, the 20 between the 20s, I should say. Yeah. So I think he's better equipped from a physical standpoint to take a lot of that goal line work, and he could take a lot of that work from Singletary too, should he assert himself. One stat that I looked at too, that is he forced last year at Utah, he forced a missed tackle on 38% of his carries, which, to me is a pretty good indicator as far as what a runner can do that's independent of his line. So Buffalo's remade their line a little bit here. Where you're taking him in drafts, he's probably RB4, RB5, but I see no reason why he couldn't be a solid flex play if he can get a pretty good stake in that Buffalo offense. And if something happens to Singletary, he's pretty locked in top 15, minimum top 20 running back.
I absolutely love it. But I'm a big Moss fan. Majukes, you guys.
That was I had to tell Michelle Majuk that I was doing a soliloquy tonight on Zach Moss.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to find Singletary's missed tackle rate, because I know that coming out in college, he had one of the top missed tackle rates, and that's why a lot of people comped him to McCoy. And I think it's so interesting that they kind of got the big brother, little brother version of similar backs. One's just heavier, one's smaller, but they're elusive. They both can catch. I mean, I'm excited to see what these guys can do, and I think splitting time, you have inherent value in both. And if one goes down, you have huge value in the other. Obviously, we're talking about Moss. So if Singletary goes down, I think Moss is going to be one of those guys that we're either going to look really smart on, or we're going to look okay on. I don't think we're going to get passed up on. Liz?
I mean, I hate to not be as enthusiastic about Moss.
It's okay.
I know that's like
the point of these shows, isn't it?
I mean, so I think the addition of Moss, who McDermott admitted in a press conference where he was going to use him the way that he had used Frank Gore last season. So he's literally telling you what's going to happen. That's not coach speak. That's like, you're right. I'm going to do this thing that you all think I'm going to do. Great.
Yeah.
my issue with it is like, okay, great. So, but the addition, I don't want to roster Zach Moss. His addition to the team tells me that I don't want to, as much as I think I could have previously to the draft, invested in Devin Singletary for all of the points that Kevin made. But also, I don't want to mess with a running back, a goal line back. And I don't think he is that much more than a goal line back. Sorry, Michelle. Like, I think he's great. I'm not going to have the Cam Akers debate. I think he's fine. But I think that the role, I mean, it also doesn't matter what he did in college. Like, this makes me wild from college game tape grinders, because you're right. He was used very differently in college. Well, guess what? You're not in fucking college anymore. And we've seen plenty of offensive coordinators and head coaches misuse players, hello Joe Mixon, in a way that isn't necessarily built for what we believed their college skill set to be. And when Josh Allen is a running back and used such at the goal line, and we're only really like relying on Moss for 6 points, I feel like his ceiling is upended by the quarterback he has. And so I'm not as interested.
But last season, like, Gore was used more than just on the goal line, and he was 34.
I mean, but also Singletary was injured for a good portion of that season. He got injured early in the season. And you're also then saying that Singletary is just like, I think it's going to be a much more even timeshare than people are anticipating. And I don't want to rely on just a back with 4 touchdowns when the quarterback vultures everyone. I mean, again, I know that that's like not the sexy, not the sexy narrative. And I'm supposed to sit here and like jack off for Moss because that's what Twitter's doing right now. But
there's so many slogans that can be put on T-shirts right there. I think my favorite's going to be
Moss
that
is pretty good.
You're not in fucking college anymore. Look on a shirt.
You know, like I get it. But I also think at a certain point, people are like, when do we hit the point where we're just creating content to create content, and when do we actually believe in it?
But on the flip side, like, at what point are you just then dismissing a rookie just because you're dismissing him? Like, Singletary didn't show enough to say he is the guy. Otherwise, they wouldn't have drafted Moss, even if it was in the 4th round.
I don't know. Maybe I don't agree with that. I think Singletary did show plenty. He also got hurt, and you're looking at a defensive-minded coach. Defensive-minded coaches generally want to lean on the run. They want to have a platoon because if your rookie already got hurt, you're adding insurance, and you have a Russian quarterback. So you're not touching either of them, is what you're saying. No, I don't want this backfield. I mean, that's it. Like I said, like I don't think the addition of Moss does not make me want Moss. It makes me want to walk away from Singletary, who previous to the draft, I was like, oh yeah, this guy could really succeed. That's it. Like it's the same argument as the Rams backfield. You know, with everybody saying like Cam Akers is it. Well, how do you know? Because the team really loves Malcolm Brown. That motherfucker was supposed to go to Detroit, and they signed an offer sheet to keep him 2 years ago. Like, how do I know that Darrell Henderson's not it? Because they also drafted John Kelly, and where the hell has he been? So I don't know. I think we make these, like, we get ourselves worked up into. And it's not saying that it's not possible. Like, all of the stats line up, but also I would rather make a more calculated risk. And to me, Moss says more about Singletary than he does about himself.
So then for Moss, compared to guys just going right after him, Edmonds, Pollard, Gibson, Henderson, Jackson, Duke Johnson, Boston Scott, you would take all of those, some of them, none of them, because obviously this is all relative to who's still on the board.
Right. Well, I'm not taking a running back this late because I'm not an idiot. So
I feel like that's more of a fiery take than any of the other stuff. You're going to take your running backs early and then just.
I'm taking out of the first 5 rounds. I want 4, and we're not talking Scott Fishbowl. Like, I'm going Robust RB, top 5 rounds. I want a floor wide receiver a la Allen Robinson, and then 4 running backs. And then I'm not really like, I'll see who falls to me. Maybe I get Damian Harris super late because I think that he's the only multiple back in New England. And I know how much Bill Belichick relies on multiple talents. Like, maybe, I don't know who else. Like, maybe I take James White because I think again these are all like running backs. I'm now mentioning 2 running backs in the Patriots. J.K. Dobbins is someone that maybe I stash. Your boy Tariq Cohen's available around then, right? But no, I'm not interested in any of these running backs. Like I would rather maybe Nyheim Hines in a PPR friendly league in the 13th round. I might take him because you have Phillip Rivers, who has relied on targeting his running backs. I believe 26% of the time he has been a starting quarterback.
The Antonio Gibson, Checkdown City, Nyheim Hines.
There you go. Antonio Gibson, I'm taking him late in the 13th, early 14th. A lot of places I like Gibson's upside. Now that's a rookie that I will gamble on because just to see, and because when your coach has made comps to Christian McCaffrey, his former running back, and I'm not convinced that Adrian Peterson, despite his age, is going to. Well, who knows what's going to happen in Washington tomorrow when people are listening to this? But right. But like,
this could be outdated.
Darius Geis doesn't have. Like obviously has durability issues. Peterson has the age issue. If we're talking about relying on a back that's multiple, Gibson has that with his wide receiver running back hybrid ability. Like that's a later round guy that I'm interested in. Where you guys are talking about, I would rather have Curtis Samuel or I don't know who else, like Anthony Miller, he's going around that same place. Like I'd rather make a positional choice than mess with any of these guys.
I love it. These are some fire takes. I like it. No, it's fantastic. It makes me not even want to talk about my next guy.
Who's your guy? Awkward. Also, you guys, this has been going on almost 2 hours. We got, like, how late it's late for you, and I gotta finish an article.
Oh yeah.
We'll go lightning round here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, let's hear Gary's running back. Yeah.
So I honestly didn't know what to take because I actually like these 3 running backs that have been discussed with Cohen and Howard, and I feel that I can't say I feel the same way. But when I just listed off all those guys, like I didn't know who really to list that was kind of past the 9th round. So I went with Duke Johnson solely because we have seen in the past what he can do as a pass catcher. He has continued to do it as a pass catcher, maybe not to the tune of 74 receptions. But we have David Johnson, who everyone has this big question mark. Do you guys know who the RB3 and 4 are in Houston?
Karan Higdon, maybe.
I never even know who.
So it's Higdon, and I know the answer to this, and I've already forgotten it. Like that's how forgettable it is. It's behind true. David. David. I don't even know who the fuck David is. So like,
David.
That's David Johnson. I'm reading.
I don't know. Who's David?
There are like 4 undrafted.
Right? They were undrafted guys. Yeah, and so to me, it's like, all right, well, if something happens to David Johnson, they don't have a Carlos Hyde, they don't have someone else. Yeah, maybe they'll bring in Lamar Miller or something, but who the hell knows? At this point, I'm willing to take the upside on what Duke could do. We have seen him pop before with the Browns. It was a couple years ago, but we've seen what he can do. And honestly, when you're looking for a pass-catching running back, you're looking for somebody that has vacated targets, kind of the opposite of the Tariq Cohen, Anthony Miller thing. You're looking for what could be. And if we're talking about Hopkins being gone and his 150 targets, then it becomes Cooks and Fuller filling in, who one's a concussion and one doesn't have a hamstring, and then Kenny Stills. And Kenny Stills, who the hell knows?
Was arrested.
He got
was arrested. Like he's facing a
Yeah.
felony charge, totally. And so then it's Randall Cobb, who we will be talking about later, to be honest. And so at that point, I want someone that's going to be a trusted weapon. I believe so wholeheartedly in narratives, and I believe in the idea of trust. And if Fuller's not always there and Stills came in last year, that Duke is going to be, he came in last year too, but that's an easy rapport to develop with your quarterback. And so I think that Duke actually, I have not drafted him once so far this offseason. And in writing this, I was like, man, I think I have a blind spot going into my drafts in that, like, he is a Nyheim Hines, he is a Tariq Cohen, and he's probably going a little bit later than both of those other guys. Right now, his ADP is 160 in best ball 10s. I've officially decided that best ball 10s confuse the hell out of me because they're so different from fantasy football calculator. But I don't know. I think there's upside there, so I'm gonna leave it there, and we can jump on to the wide receivers.
Yeah, because we've been talking
For the
about.
record, I like that one.
Thank you.
I like that one for all the reasons you stated, and for the targets. And I think like just the point about Duke Johnson, if you like narratives, the narrative surrounding him was that he never got his due despite being wildly hyped as a rookie.
He never got his due.
Right.
I wanted the Cowboys to take him the year before they took Zeke. I was like, take him, and then no.
I think what was the nail in his fantasy coffin, frankly, was when the Browns acquired Jarvis Landry. They told me everything they needed to know about Duke Johnson.
And that's what's confusing about the Cobb signing and the contract that was given is, how does that mesh? Like, I'm not worried about Stills, but it'll be interesting to see. I think so. I really do just want to hammer this point home at least for my view on running backs, and that's you're kind of poo-pooing Moss, but then you're saying like Duke is okay because you think Duke has more standalone value. Yes, he has standalone value, but I think his ceiling is so much lower, whereas Moss has less standalone value with a lower floor, but my God, his ceiling is so much higher. And
That's
it just
true, but you're
depends
also not
at that
getting
point
them
of
in the
draft.
same place. You're getting them at
there are a few rounds apart. I listed them when I
those
listed
are
those
significant
backs,
later rounds. Like once those rounds at the running back position start turning
two
over,
rounds, they're 11 picks apart right now on Fantasy Football Calculator.
So that is 2 rounds. To me, 2 rounds when you're heading into the 13th round, like that's your last pick before you pick a kicker and a defense.
Yeah, but at that point, usually most of those people aren't taking a safe floor; they're taking a high upside.
That's fair, depending on
again how you draft and all that stuff.
Yeah,
so
construction.
I really do appreciate your perspective on this because, like you said, it is a little bit it is different than the normal circle jerk that is Twitter. And for anybody that might still actually be up listening with us, like I think it's valuable to have the different perspectives that go into a draft because some fucker drafts Patrick Mahomes 101, some crazy nut job drafts Dak 103. Just had to say it. Okay. Moving on.
So yeah, let's do a little lightning round here, and I'll just say because my wide receiver sleeper is Anthony Miller. Now, what I'll say is this: I mean, he's going about the end of the 11th round. If you like D.D. Westbrook last year, he's got John DeFilippo there. He's got Nick Foles. I think we can see. With the hype that D.D. Westbrook had, I think Anthony Miller, who had over 50% usage in the slot, I think he can be that guy, that kind of upside at a much more palatable price. There's targets certainly to be had there in Chicago. I'd say, the tertiary and secondary option with Cohen and Miller, but I think he's just going way too late in drafts, and I'm happy to scoop him up in every league that I can take him as my 4th or 5th wide receiver.
Yep. I think we all like him. It's really just a matter of health, right? That's really
shoulder.
his downside. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. I'm just going to go next. I happen to be on the show doc next, and mine take everything I said about Duke Johnson and apply it to Randall Cobb. He's my wide receiver sleeper. We know the offense and what he's coming into, and I will say that Stills is the wide receiver 4. Randall Cobb was brought in with a contract. I think it's 3 years, $28 million.
Got paid.
I remember he got paid really well, and he showed up. He had 3 games in the middle of the season randomly. There were injuries that contributed to it, but he was, he averaged over the course of a 3-game span like six receptions for I think like 100-ish yards and a touchdown, and that was with Dak. I don't think he's getting a worse quarterback. I think he's getting the same, if not better, quarterback. And who the hell knows? Especially this to me is a guy. I'm not starting Randall Cobb in the first few weeks of the season. He is a stretch guy, and I'm happy to keep him on my bench because he could pop. And in an event of bye weeks or whatnot, I'll be happy to have him. Casey.
Hello. Yeah. So far, I like both of those choices. I went with Jameson Crowder. If you know me, it's Jameson Crowder every single year. Last season, I mean, he was number 1 in everything on the Jets. Like, seriously. And where you're getting him, you're getting a guy who could be a wide receiver 1 on his team. I mean, that's a strong possibility considering they did last season.
He should be.
Him so freaking cheap. Defenses are going before him. Like, yeah, it's like really.
He's going wide receiver 45 right
I'm
now.
not saying he's going to
FF
be the guy. And these sleeper guys aren't guys. Like, so many people get so frustrated with it because they're like, well, I'm not going to start this guy. I'm not going to do this. We're not asking you to start these guys every single week.
No.
We're not asking you to do that. Like, if you want to, that's on you for being dumb. But you know, make your own decisions, do whatever. But these are guys that are great fill-ins for bye weeks, matchup dependent. You know, like look at the matchups, look at what their schedule's like. You know, bye weeks and injuries are always a problem. And for where you're getting them, if you're going to get a wide receiver one on a team that late after defenses and probably kickers too. I'm just going to say probably kickers too. So mind blowing. I just don't get it.
In the middle of the season, starting week 9, Crowder last year went 8 for 83 and 1, 5 for 81 and 1, 5 for 76 and 1. A couple shitty games where I started him and it sucked. And then 6 for 90 and 2, 4 for 60, 8 for 66 and 1. If you're getting a wide receiver 1 this late in the draft, just take him. Don't think twice about it because who gives a shit? He's probably your wide receiver 4 or 5.
Exactly.
At that point, you're good. And if he pops, he's going to pop. Sam Darnold is 23. Let's not pretend like he's Aaron Rodgers' age, and we've already seen him past his prime. He's been in the league for 2 years, and one of them was all messed up because he made out with some dirty person.
Had himself a city boy summer.
Now, Liz, you're going to have to sell us on your boy because
right.
I don't even know.
Paying attention.
So this was, I mean, very much what you just said about Casey's take. Like, does Crowder have some burnt takes? Does he have durability issues? Is he attached to a shitty offense? Yeah. Yes, but you're willing to take all that because of volume. And even if it's a small ball, not particularly sexy amount of opportunity, right? You're still going to take it because of value. So I submit to you, Devin Funchess, who remains just 26 years old. 26 years old. You talked about that's 3 years older than Sam Darnold, and that's it. He still has an enviable catch radius. Yep. He's 6'4", 232 pounds, right? Rodgers is getting older. He's always nicked up. Sure, he's accurate, but you know, this is a receiver that can climb the ladder and bring down a contested catch. He has undeniable red zone appeal, a tweener out of Michigan as a tight end. Oh, by the way, I know we're all excited about Jay Sternberger, or whatever the hell his name is, but Jimmy Graham's departure to the Bears, thank you, Ryan Pace yet again, frees up 65 looks. So I know that Alan Lazard had Thanksgiving over at Aaron Rodgers' house. So now automatically he's the wide receiver too. But I'm not convinced that that's the case, seeing as the Packers brass passed on drafting a receiver in the deepest class we've seen since 2014 and or ever, and instead added Funchess. So in 2017, we can't forget that he posted a 63, 848 stat line, top 20 fantasy numbers. He has, like I said, he still has a height adjusted speed score in the 87th percentile. And this is the Packers. There aren't many options when we're talking about value and we're talking about red zone appeal. Is it wild to think that Funchess, who is going largely undrafted, I drafted him in the 21st round of the Fishbowl, could see, 5 to 7 scores?
Yep.
Fine.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. They signed into a nothing contract too. They're just, they're playing dollar store with free agency this off season. But yeah, it's absolutely within the realm of possibilities.
It's also worth noting, just not to interrupt, but also like people are like, oh, he hasn't done anything. Well, 2019, when he went to the Colts, he broke his collarbone during the season opener and didn't play at all last year.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you can't even say he sucked last year. He didn't even have the opportunity to be on the field.
I blame Andrew Luck. If it wasn't for Andrew Luck, he wouldn't have broken his collarbone. Duh.
Yeah.
Ooh, that makes me uncomfortable.
But I do want to say something to this because like the Funchess thing is really interesting because as Kevin and I have lamented at length on here and on Twitter, whatever, like we hate the draft that the Packers did and blah, blah, blah. But like sometimes you also have to step back and just say like people are logical creatures. Like they don't do stuff trying to intentionally fuck their lives up. And so at some point, do you say like the Packers GM and Matt LaFleur had an intention in what they did? And I think like there's a world to say like Kevin and I talked about Alan Lazard and Scott Fish, and Kevin was like, I don't think he's his wide receiver too. Well, if he's not if Lazard is not the wide receiver too, Funchess is the only other option that could be there, and he represents, like you said, the Jimmy Graham big-bodied style. So like there's definite upside to be had. Value may not be there, but there's definite upside to at least see. And ultimately, within the first 3 weeks, you're going to know if this was a dud pick. And who gives a shit? It's so late in your draft. He's not even on FF Calculator as a top 66 wide receiver.
He could be the Dante Moncrief of 2020.
Oh,
totally possible.
Don't tease me. Don't tease me.
The opportunity for Moncrief was there. The process for those of us who drafted and hyped him, was there. He just couldn't put it together. So it's possible that could be Funchess, but I will always put process over result.
Yeah.
Funchess. So I put a tweet out. Last month I put a tweet out that says, guys that Devin Funchess is younger than, okay? He's younger than Jarvis Landry, Keenan Allen, Tyler Lockett, Devontae Parker, Jameson Crowder, Devontae Adams, Robbie Anderson, T.Y. Hilton, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Odell Beckham Jr., DeAndre Hopkins, Adam Thielen, and Marvin Jones. Just to name. I mean, he's younger than all those guys.
The Parker one is shocking. Wow.
Yeah.
But I guess Parker was on the Bears, right?
The Cooper Kupp one was shocking to me.
Yeah.
Right.
So now, I mean, I got this off the internet. Like, how much you can internet?
It is the internet, Casey.
Yes.
If it's on the internet, it must be true. So let's just dip into tight ends real quick, and then we'll pack up shop here. So before I had Robert Woods, my man crush, I had Jack Doyle. Jack Doyle was my ex-girlfriend before Robert Woods. He's going in the 14th round. If you're gonna stack a couple tight ends late, if you're just gonna hammer running backs and wide receivers, I can't think of anybody else I'd like to get than Jack Doyle. And with all the tight ends that have been talked about, Jack Doyle is pretty much a forgotten man. We know Philip Rivers loves to target tight ends. Doyle doesn't have Ebron there. Yeah, he has Trey Burton, but he signed a veteran minimum, and I just the floor is pretty much zero there. I can't really see him eating into anything. I don't see why he can't be a fringe top 12 guy. Yeah, he's not going to have a lot of boom weeks, but he's going to get you consistent points. That's I just think he's a forgotten guy in that Gesicki and Noah Fant and guys like that. He outscored Noah Fant last year. He outscored a lot of those guys that we're talking about, that are going way above him, rounds above him. So Jack Doyle's not a sexy name, but I like him for a nice consistent floor. If you want to just wait on tight end and just maybe stack a couple, I can think of worse options than Doyle.
And I think it needs to be emphasized that like Jack Doyle is maybe not someone you're drafting in a normal league, but in any form of tight end premium, everybody go fucking nuts over tight end. It's so ridiculous. I will happily take 2 or 3 of these guys depending on roster size. I'm saying when I say these guys, literally the 4 people we're about to talk about. Yeah. I'm happy to have 2 or 3 of them.
So many guys
that's it. Yes, completely. And there's a bunch of guys that weren't on here because to me they are so specifically tight end premium, but Jack Doyle bridges the two.
Yes.
And one more thing about Jack Doyle. Philip Rivers' quarterback team has maintained a top 12 tight end in 13 of his 14 seasons as starter.
That's a good stat.
That's awesome.
Stat. Especially because they have him in the Scottish Bowl. All right.
Well, in that case, Casey, who's yours?
I put Johnny Smith. It's not really a guy I've actually talked that much about, which was surprising to me when I looked at him. I I write. Who knows what's going to happen? I write streaming articles. Yay for Fighting Chance Fantasy. But no, tight end is like my little baby. I love to. That's just my position that I just adore because I love streaming that position. And Jonnu Smith was a guy that I talked about a lot last year. I mean, when Delaney Walker was out, hello, you can just plug him back in. And now that Delaney Walker is completely gone, not to say that, I mean, Delaney Walker hasn't been the picture of health. So, I mean, he wasn't there a good portion of Jonnu's career there. But I think he's going to see a lot of targets. I think he's going to be one of those reliable guys. He's always been that streamer type of dude. And I think that if you have him, he's worth taking a flyer on. I'm not saying he's going to be like tight end 1 or 2 or anything like that, but he's a really deep guy that you can get and feel confident when you start him at least.
I love Jonnu Smith. Like I have loved him. He comped to Delaney Walker coming out of the draft and was supposed to be the heir apparent. That moment is now he's flashed in previous seasons when healthy. My only issue is obviously the limited amount, especially with Derrick Henry re-signing with the team and completely messing up the running backs don't matter conversation. But obviously the passing volume is so limited in Tennessee. But I still think like you've got AJ Brown and you've got Jonnu Smith, and those are going to be your 1A and 1B receiving options. So I like him a lot. Also, I always feel like talent ultimately is a tiebreaker for me. And when we're looking at these lower round guys, like, am I looking at Gesicki, who has the wild spark metrics that I think he's a 97th percentile spark athlete. I love him. He found his mojo when being used as the receiver out of the slot, but also his target volume inflated considerably after Preston Williams was sidelined. So you can't also call Preston Williams a breakout candidate and like the math doesn't work there. And this is still math sometimes. So, so like and Jonnu Smith is going like a round and a half, I think, later than Gesicki. So I love that pick. I'm taking him where I can, and you're going to know that you're going to stream. And like Gary said, this is a position that like, sure, if you want to go draft Mark, the point is not to draft Mark Andrews in 2020. The point is to find the 2019 version of Mark Andrews in 2020. Yeah. And I think that Smith could end up being that player.
Who I think Gesicki probably is, but that's a separate question.
I mean, I don't like it's those two guys in every draft. Like depending on where I am in the stake or how it falls, those are the two guys I pick every time.
I've thought so much about Jonnu, like just a ton, and what concerns me is that in games over 4 targets, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 games over 4 targets. There are a couple of games at 4 targets. He had a game where he had a 57-yard reception because he's that much of a beast. I waver on him. I want him as a player, and then I look at his stats, like specifically for Scott Fish. I debated on taking him, and I was like, I like him. Oh, he's awesome. He's awesome. He's gonna do X, Y, and Z, just like everything we just said. And then I looked at the stat line, and I was like, damn, my view of what he actually did last year is so skewed. But that's also then in comparison to what tight ends do. And if really you're not a top 4 tight end, you're looking at 700 to 900 yards, and you're hoping for a smattering of touchdowns. So I don't know. It's very confusing.
If you can clear, I mean, do you remember the weeks where you were debating, not you specifically, but all of us were debating Jordan Akins? There was a moment that we're like, which one of these Texans tight ends is more I'm looking at route percentage, trying to figure out.
I spent a lot of sleepless nights with Ryan Griffin as my tight end.
Well, let me tell you about the Jets tight end while we're on that point.
That was a pro segue, by the way.
Thank you, Kevin Tompkins. Ryan Griffin, as you all know, scored 5 touchdowns last year. As we just mentioned, that's a pretty good line for the position, especially where you're drafting. Yeah. So I am probably against my better judgment, and this is not a take lock, allowing myself to warm to the idea of a post-hype breakout. Again, another one.
Again. Post.
Right. Yes. That's a PPS for Chris Herndon. I mean, I really can't get rid of the rapport, the rookie learning curve, and remember the rapport that he and Darnold had at the close of the 2018 season. And we know that Gase has a penchant for featuring the position, a la Ryan Griffin's 5 touchdowns. Reports are always that Herndon's lighting it up in camp. Doesn't matter, even if there's not a camp right now. Like I think there's a dude out of The Athletic who said he's going to be a prominent part of the 2020 Jets offense. I know these are the same things that we heard last year, but obviously last year didn't work out between the suspension and the injuries and the rust that he showed. In fact, my biggest concern about Chris Herndon is that he has obviously shown an issue with discipline, and conditioning is so important to staying in football shape. And without the necessary structure and COVID being a thing this season, I'm worried that he is not conditioning properly and will like pull a hammy week 2, like right away. So that is why I am the most worried about him. But if he is changed or has found maybe he doesn't like, maybe he's one of those people who doesn't like structure, wants to do his own thing, will be more disciplined if it's on his own terms. I don't know. Like I'm but it wouldn't surprise me to see him draw 70 looks, 65 looks. Like that's a solid amount of volume when you're getting the guy in the late double-digit rounds.
Totally. If your roster is deep enough, I recommend taking Herndon and Griffin and just seeing what happens in the first few weeks. I completely agree. The fact that Gase talks him up actually makes me nervous because Gase didn't do that about players. But I mean, like, who the fuck else do they have to throw to? Like, it's Crowder, maybe Mims, Perriman. But, like, again, Mims and Perriman are learning the offense. So, I mean, Herndon is probably learning the offense because he hasn't even been to the building before. But, yeah.
Darnold knows who he is, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Is Chris Herndon the new training camp Devonta Parker? He's the new tight end Devonta Parker. Every year we expect him to break out. I think that's right. Just so for you guys don't know that was a comment in the chat there. Okay,
Drake
I'm going to go.
Ask, hold on, once I know we're like long, but Drake Hugh does ask. He mentions Jack Doyle, who Kevin mentioned, Johnny, who Casey mentioned, and Eric Ebron. Gary, that's not your guy, is it? Ebron's not your guy, is it?
I was debating between, and I decided to stick with my super late tight end instead of Eric Ebron, because I didn't feel comfortable enough with it.
I will just put a plug in for Ebron very quickly.
Yeah, please do.
Just very quickly. I mean, I don't love it, right? But he is obviously 2019 was obviously like a down year for him, but he did post a career effort in 2018. He had 13 scores. Admittedly, that was with Andrew Luck feeding him the ball. He was the tight end 7 that year. There are also reports that Ben Roethlisberger, quote, pulled strings to bring Ebron into the organization. They're part of they met at like a Christian men's promise keeper convention. I don't know. They're part of the similar Christian men's group. So there's a pre-existing, at least personal relationship there. So that means Ben likes him. The Vance McDonald experiment has been going on year after year and has yet to ROI. So I'm not putting a lot of stock into it. And when you look at Ben Roethlisberger continually chasing the ghost of the lunch pail that was Heath Miller, it seems to me that Ebron, right? And if we're talking about a guy who hurt his elbow and is a little bit older and might have a moment to adjust his anticipation and need a safety valve, especially in the red area of the field, then Ebron could, again, the volume is not going to be explosive and huge, but do we see 5 to 6 touchdowns, Eric Ebron? I mean, I can tell myself a story quite easily without the tequila that happens.
Oh, way more than 5 to 6. I talked to Kevin about this at length. Someone I was targeting in Scott Fishbowl. I think he has a 7 to 10 touchdown ceiling, to be perfectly honest. And I actually think you talk about post hype sleeper for Chris Herndon. That's Vance McDonald, except for he has a different name and he's younger and he's bigger, and that's Eric Ebron.
Love it, Gary.
I like tight ends that are in an offense, specifically tight ends that are in an offense that have a lot of other wide receivers, a lot of other targets, because in the red zone, they get lost in the shuffle, and there's big-ass dudes that are going to go up and get it. So I'm all about that, which will segue into my deep sleeper. And I'm only just going to throw this out there because no one's going to draft him in their normal regular leagues. But come week 4 and you're streaming, you're not sure what the hell to do. I think that Tyler Eifert is going to have a resurgence. And it's a name that no one has thought about in 3 or 4 years. And it's because he is now on the Jags under Jay Gruden, who is the OC, with a head coach who has – what the hell is going on with Doug Marrone? Like, no one really knows. It's still Doug Marrone there. Oh, my God. I'm hoping I'm right in saying that.
Well, what the hell's going on with Jay Gruden? He might not have a job.
But Jay Gruden's the OC there. Like, I think that
but I think he might get fired after this WAPO article.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, we'll see what happens there. This whole Reddit conspiracy throwing off this Tyler Eifert hype. I think you're part of the conspiracy trying to downplay the hype. The Eifert.
I drafted him in fifth.
Yeah, she does not like this.
Yeah, we did. Me too.
I'm all in. He stayed healthy last year. Keep going. I'm preaching. You're making up for all of that Zach Moss bullshit I had to listen to.
Well, that's the freaking reason I drafted him. Oh, he was healthy last season. No, really, just
no. I mean, it's true though. Like, no. Pretty much. So he's on the Jags. Just talking about the Jags. Actually, no. Let's go back. Everybody knows him for this season where he had 13 touchdowns in 2015. The next season where everybody was super hyped on him, he only got 5 touchdowns. Do you know when he did that? 8 games. He still was awesome, but his back injury came up. He came back. I think he tore an ACL. He came back. He hurt his back. He hasn't played a full 16 games until last year. He did play a full 16 games, and last year he had like 400, almost 500, and I think 3 or 4 touchdowns in an offense that had Andy Dalton falling off of, he got injured. Nobody really knew what was going on. There was CJ Uzama there. There was kind of everything was up in flux. Nobody knew the quarterback situation. Fine. I can give a pass to that. But now he's going to a Jags offense who has Gardner Minshew, who seems quite competent. This only competition for targets, main competition, like actual tangible competition, is DJ Chark, in my opinion, because D.D. Westbrook is there. He'll get his targets. That's fine. Laviska Shenault came in. He's a rookie. We'll see what happens. Leonard Fournette got 90 plus targets last year.
Yep.
And it's Leonard Fournette. Like, that shouldn't happen. They brought in Chris Thompson and Tyler Eifert and Shenault because they obviously said we need more to supplement what Gardner Minshew is doing. I think that when we talk about like the touchdown upside guy with just like some yardage floor, that's going to really be an Eifert. Eifert this year is going to be what we have thought of as Ebron prior to his 13 touchdown or 14 touchdown season. I see the stars aligning. Josh Oliver was there. They drafted him. He's a second year, but he missed all of last season. I think that Gruden is going to rely on his guys, and I think that the best thing a young quarterback can have is a big-ass dude to catch touchdowns in the red zone. And he's going tight end 33. You might not draft him unless it's like a weird league like we've talked about with Scott Fish. But I think at some point you're going to – at some point, you're going to probably be streaming him if you're a tight end streamer. And if he does hit, and he hits even 40 or 50 yards and 8 or 9 touchdowns, you just got a guy for free, which we see all the time. And he's going to be like, he's going to finish the season, tight end like 9 to 14.
In the teens at worst.
Yeah, at worst. So I'm all about it. In terms of when we talk about sleepers, to me, he's the ultimate. You're going to draft him somewhere, and he's going to surpass that value.
I love it.
It's like you guys are reading my Scott Fishbowl team. I swear to God.
It's because we talk so much, you and I. Well, for anybody that's still here, pretty much sounds like it's probably just Drake. Anybody that's still here, we kind of just that's all of us. The only other thing I have to say is I love the fact that Kevin sniped the shit out of Drake in his Scott Fishbowl. I got a text message every time it happened, and it was fantastic. But Liz, Kacey, thank you so much for coming and joining us. Really, it was awesome. I know we went over 2 hours. We kind of thought it might go long, but it was
just
fantastic.
Went for it. Fuck it. Why not?
Yeah. Let us know again, just real quick, where we can find you, and Kevin will lead us out.
Go ahead, Kacey.
You can find me at Fighting Chance Fantasy, where I write. You can also find me on Twitter at the Kacey Kasem. So just check me out.
How do we get one of your hats?
So there is a website called Inappropriate Trucker Hats. So just Google that. Because I think her name's like UncleBecca.com is where like some of the hats are. I get my hats all over the place. There's just one place that resells, like they get vintage hats that have never been worn, and then they like just sell them. So I got this like pink and black zebra print hat the other day that my wife is like, I'm gonna burn it as soon as you're like upstairs doing a podcast. So when I get downstairs, there may be a pile of ash. But yeah, I just if something looks dope, I'll be like, that's mine.
Awesome. I love your hats. I envy them. You can find me at Liz Loza _FF, and that is on Twitter and Instagram. I have started playing around with Instagram a lot more. I started like last year, and there is an interesting and very active fantasy community on Instagram. I think people kind of poo-poo it because they think it's a bunch of tweens like reposting TikTok videos, but it's not. It's cool. So check me out there and keep an eye out for Rust versus Rust and the Yahoo Fantasy Football podcast, which is available wherever you get your podcasts.
Yep. By the way, I will say just one more thing before we close out. That is my girlfriend's favorite. So I moved to North Dakota this time last year from upstate New York and Syracuse. So the one podcast that she listens to is the Yahoo Fantasy Football podcast.
Oh.
She loves you. She loves Matt Harmon. She hates every other podcast but ours and the Yahoo Fantasy Football podcast.
I love her. Tell her thank you.
I will. She's watching right now. It's actually the first one she's watched live because she's usually working now. So yeah, she wanted me
but
to.
She asked for the night off so she could watch Liz.
Well,
What's
no,
her name? So I can give her. We're recording tomorrow. I'm going to give her a shout out. What's her name?
Aaron.
Aaron what?
Aaron Shaw.
Okay. Aaron Shaw. And she does not have a 35-year-old son, as we discussed at the top of the show.
Not biologically, no.
Okay.
I can confirm that. I did a lot of vetting, but yeah. So anything else, Gary?
No, I honestly thank you guys so much. This was fantastic.
This was awesome.
It was a
this was
blast.
fantastic. Thank you for taking 2 hours and 6 minutes of your time to just fuck around with us.
Yeah,
For sure.
It was awesome.
Thank you guys
So
for having us.
absolutely. So so Liz is not Kacey. Kacey's not Liz. We got a lot of that in the chat.
I know that's really confusing, guys.
my name's not Gary. I'm Evan.
Right. I'm the fantasy football counselor, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we'll wrap her up. So again, Liz, Kacey, thank you so much for coming on. And for Gary, I'm Kevin Tompkins. For those of you still watching, thank God you stuck with us. Thank you for watching Fighting Chats Live, and we'll see you next week.